Every year, MTV auctions off an hour of broadcasting to raise money for the Nordorf Robbins Music Therapy Foundation. This year, the hour was purchased by Island Records. This is how they decided to spend their money.
Hey, it's episode 18 of Hatchet Chat. This week is Shockumentary. I'm here with my man, MC Snax. What's up, Snax?
What up, y'all? How's it going?
Y'all don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Canada, right?
We do, but it's earlier and it's not as big of a deal. It's actually in October. But we do call it Thanksgiving.
Oh, you do? But it's not based on the Pilgrims meeting the Native American pre-genocide.
I don't know what it's about, and I don't know if I've met anybody who has a good answer what it's about. I'm sure somebody does, but it's about something to do with our history.
Jay and Shaggy don't celebrate it because Shaggy is part Cherokee, allegedly. So I remember that in the book. They talk about they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. So I wonder if the Juggalos in solidarity. I don't know. Who knows? Speaking of Native rappers, ABK is Lumbee. That's his Native American tribe. And he put out a great album, which was like a one-off of him as the character from Psychopathic Riders, which is actually ill. Sawed Off, right? Wait,
yeah.
Is that his name? Yeah.
That's his
good.
rider name. And yeah, that EP was actually great, man. Like I expected
Lone Rider.
it to be dope. Yeah, the Lone Rider. And I expected it to be dope, but when I heard it, I was like, man, this is actually incredible. So if there's any Juggalos that, for whatever reason, haven't listened to that yet, you got to check it out.
And you have a song with ABK, which is kind of ill.
Yeah, Scrub Till You Shine.
Scrub Till You Shine from, what's the record? Your record?
That's on one of the Healing Sounds from Benevolent Realm mini EPs, Volume 2, I believe.
That's what's up. Peep that flavor. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool that my boy did a song with an artist on Psychopathic. Holler. So we posted the Most Tasteless interview. I just dropped my podcast with George, who runs MNE. That came out Monday. Some of you may have checked it out. He was really cool to talk to me about the label. And you listened to that interview, right, Snax?
Yes, I did.
And he's a cool dude. And like he talks about how ABK gave him his inroad in, which is why I brought ABK, how he booked The Gathering and how he left with Jamie and Paul to start Magic Ninja. And as a businessman and as a music industry guy, I think George works hard, and it was cool of him to talk to me. So we thought that there would be a lot of response from a Most Tasteless review because people would be like, oh, what about the feud between ICP and Twisted? Like, why did you review it? Blah, blah, blah. There was none of that. Really, there was one controversial thing that got hammered onto us from Fago lovers, the YouTube comments, Twitter. I mean, I appreciate y'all being honest, but we were just going by Wikipedia as our source. And my mom is a librarian. She always says, you can't trust Wikipedia because it's not necessarily always accurate. So let's get into this controversy before we go to our special surprise of this episode. Snax, I'll pass the mic to you.
You got it. So it was brought to our attention that there might not have actually been a Most Tasteless release in 1997. It might actually be a mistake. We do have to use kind of limited resources for like obscure pieces of information when we're doing this series, and we definitely, Wikipedia was our main resource for the release date. But it might not have. It might have actually just had a 98 release date. I've heard Juggalos say different things, like the Fetus cover was released in 97. I've heard people say it was released as like a limited run in the 98 release, and that was the earliest Most Tasteless was released, period. And I've heard people say the Fetus cover was released as a limited edition after an original 98 release. So we're still not 100% sure, but based on the copyright date of the OG no makeup cover, like the original pressing, which we found on Discogs, the copyright date is 98, so it's looking like it did not come out in 97.
So if that's the case, it may have come out after Para La Isla, which means this wasn't Misery's debut. And when he's referencing his EP, it's like a callback. So that we didn't mean to spread disinformation. The former president of the U.S. did enough of that, did a good enough job of that. So we're not trying to keep it like fake news, but we didn't know. Some people were like, well, Twisted was spreading fake news saying that they released it in 97 because they wanted people to think they were doing it earlier than they did, which shows they have more legitimacy. I don't know, like that was some of the comments. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but there was a lot of confusion. So, I guess I should have asked George that, but I did the podcast before we did this episode, so who knows? So in other words, we are trying to do this series very chronologically. We'll get into it. In Shockumentary, Shaggy's wearing a Twisted shirt in the video for Hocus Pocus remix, and Twisted and Misery are in the video. So it's all happening around the same time. But Most Tasteless, it most likely didn't come out in 97, which means the Wikipedia article's wrong, which means someone should go in and edit it. I don't know. If someone else tries doing a Hatchet Chat, they're going to like run into the same problems. The next duo who does a discography series, it's unlikely this will ever happen again, but we wanted to set the record straight. Okay, sorry, Juggalos. So let's talk about, first, here's a special guest. Here's a special feature. Boom! Vinnie the ICP Kid. We actually got him on the show, and we set up this fresh Zoom. And Vinnie, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing really well, brother. I really appreciate you ninjas reaching out. It's definitely a pleasure. Brother Lars, big fan. And literally, life is good, healthy, and happy, brother. Hope the same for you.
Life has been good despite everything, and you're known in the Juggalo community as a super positive guy, super inspiring person. We met briefly at Dark Carnival Games in 20 was that 2017?
18.
That's what's up. And we've been in touch. We've talked on the phone, and we've I guess you could say we've been homies from afar for a few years. And it's just always cool to check in with you. And we wanted to talk to you because I don't know if you knew this, Vinnie. This week's episode is the Shockumentary episode, which you are a huge part of. Yeah.
Super fresh. Definitely one of the biggest highlights of my life, brother. Super fresh.
Super fresh, and the word fresh, you use it a lot in that documentary, and I actually have a song called Hurricane Fresh that is almost like it's a tribute to you because I started saying fresh after watching that a lot because you kind of brought that word back. Would you agree?
You know what? Honestly, I found it heavily influenced by the gentlemen themselves, the almighty Insane Clown Posse and everyone that has rolled with them. So it was a hard, take as far as for me. That's kind of like if you refer to like the Smurfs, like Ninja and like, just fresh and like it's a word that can be used in many different ways. But yeah, man, like literally, I mean, fresh is literally a 100% homage to the Juggalo world. You know what I mean? And I gripped it from them.
That's what's up. So let's talk quickly. How did you first get exposed to ICP? Can you tell that story real quick?
Yeah, super fresh, man. It's definitely come out of my jaws a couple of times. However, it was really, really a unique experience where baseball was a gigantic part of my life, similar to like the Sandlot or anybody like that. And even though definitely my skills were nowhere near to pay the bills, I had a lot of heart for baseball, and so did my homies. So just one day, we're playing pickup baseball, and we were fortunate enough to have one of our friends have an older brother. And he had a boombox, man, and he had a boombox out on that basketball court playing by himself. He was banging Carnival of Carnage. And it's the only time I can ever remember dropping my bat and walking over to go see what somebody had, going on. And when I heard that music, it took me a moment to go back to play the game. But like I'm saying, we played baseball all day, every day for like 10, 12 hours a day for years. And when I heard that music, it was like I was already well into, rap, and I was well versed as far as many different cultures and many different, flavors of music. When I heard that, I dropped the bat. The only time I can ever think of, and dope, man. It's been a wild ride.
A momentous moment in your life. A meant to be. The power of the Dark Carnival. That's what's up. How did they get a hold of you for the documentary? I'm sure you've told this story, but like that must have been exciting when that happened.
Oh, beyond exciting. Like I have a mutual friend, and his name is AKA Iron Fist Bubba McKenzie, AKA Bubba Felix. Bubba was a super ninja, and he held down the OG Hot Hits location. He was Sue Abbas's #1 employee for many, many years. And it's kind of like one of those flavorful things where I was taught to make friends before you need them. And, it was just kind of like one of those honest, very, very, very natural type relationships that were built over a long time period. You can only imagine rolling into a music store on a bicycle, and then upgrading to a Spree, and then upgrading, which is a moped, and then upgrading to like, going with your father on trips and all that kind of stuff. So while this was taking place, I met this guy, and his name is Justin, but I call him Bubba And, Bubba Felix is a very fresh ninja. And he was, like I said, a friend and had an inside source over at Hot Hits. That was a big plug for the Insane Clown Posse in regards to Alex's brother owning and his sister-in-law owning and operating Hot Hits. So Bubba took a liking to me, and Bubba saw that, like, this kid is no joke. Like, he's coming in here on the fucking daily from damn near the beginning, wanting any and all intelligence in regards to predominantly Psychopathic Records and Insane Clown Posse, okay? And he was cordial and sweet enough to, like, put me on with Alex. And he said, look, man, and I don't know, because my end of the portion was, like, the hard cutoff. Like, meaning when I had gotten reached out from, it was at the very tail end of all the flavor. So Bubba had said to Alex, flat out, this kid is no joke. He's been down with us and down with you guys for longer than you could possibly imagine. And he's acquired quite a few things. And then, boom, like, he asked me, do you mind if I give Alex Abyss as your number? And you can imagine that, being a kid, like 16 years old, right?
Right.
I fucking turned 41 last month, right? Or, whatever. You can imagine that excitement. And that's what happened, man. At the time, like, Alex was, the big boss and the fucking shot caller. And he called and boom, it worked.
That's what's up. That's cool. That's like what you showing up and your passion, opening doors and bringing opportunities. And kind of what's so intriguing about it is your raw appreciation for this thing that was bubbling up. And before it become this household name, you were a model for, like, how it could affect people positively. And that's a cool story, that it was not a label thing. It was just you being a fan coming into Hot Hits back in the day. Right.
And just being so lucky, it's not about the passion, and it's not about, what kind of sacrifices you make to follow something or to really, really, engage. You know what I mean? It's about just how wild and strange or unique. Sometimes in life, you can make different decisions. It's like a fucking Choose Your Way adventure book,
Yeah.
And it's just unique and it's fucking fresh. That somehow, some way, everything naturally. Like, this isn't scripted. It wasn't something you can pay for. It's not something you can buy. And it's straight up, it's magical. And that leads me, like, it's been brought up many times. The carnival is real. Like, whoever's paying attention, the carnival provides, and it's real. And it's awesome, not like anything else.
I agree. The carnival has been in my life throughout, and it's allowed me to connect with some amazing people. And, like, having this moment to talk to you is an example of, like, how you don't expect life to do that. But, like, if you have faith and if you are a good person and you just keep that perspective, good things happen. And that's what's up. That's what's up. I want to do so I do a podcast. I want to have a longer conversation with you, and I want to get into more stuff, but I want to end with one question that I know you've talked about before, but I think the followers of Hatchet Chat would love to hear. What's your favorite Joker's card and why? Ooh.
Oh, straight up. That's a real punch, but in a positive way. It has to always go back to Carnival of Carnage. And the reason why I say that is because although in many times, the first thing you hear is normally what you go back to, okay? And even like Jump Steady has made that a lot of help in my mentality as far as, like, when we talk about things that you really care for or things that really, really inspire you or, like, are your freshest, your deepest, fucking most flavorful things. It's Carnival of Carnage. And the reason why is because, number one, I agree with that statement, that it's the first thing I ever heard and it shocked my whole world. To me, that is the culmination in coup d'etat as far as, like, the guys had a lot of ideas, and especially in the beginning, there's many avenues they could have went. But with Carnival, I firmly believe in my life, and it's only because everyone else that I speak to agrees with me that, or it's just that was the beginning of the true professional push for something huge, bigger than I'm positive anyone, including the Insane Clown Posse themselves, could possibly manifest. Nobody could have thought wow, this one record, and then compiling it to a Joker's card and making it like, a saga, and then like, from the beginning and not even knowing what you're doing. And it was well received. And, I'm not from, downtown Detroit. I'm from the suburbs. And for that to find its way to the suburbs in damn near the beginning and to be that well received, oh man, Carnival of Carnage.
That's what's up. That's tight.
Yeah.
We'll get into more stuff on our next episode, but this is a cool little cameo from our man Vinnie, the ICP Kid, and this is tight. You're the first guest we've had on the show besides Snax, so that's what's up.
Really?
Yeah, a huge one. This is a huge first guest, so that's what's up.
Hey man, I'm serious. I'm so stoked and I'm so geeked, man. It's so fresh for me to be able to mark out. I hope you really understand and how much you know that as an MC, as a lyricist, as a rapper, MC Lars, you fucking kill it, brother. And I'm a gigantic fan of yours. So to have me on your hook and to get a hold of me, and to, in my opinion, feel like we are straight up homies, the shit. And I can't wait absolutely. I can't wait for the future. Let's get back to shows, touring, seeing each other, literally celebrating the way we do it. And to know deep down that you are an original juggalo yourself. That blows me away. That's super fresh.
That is fresh. That is super fresh. Thank you for saying that, dude. Like, that means a lot to me from you, and I appreciate the love, man. And that show where I opened for them in Denver, where I met you backstage, was like a magic moment just to show that, like, when you're real about the stuff that inspires you and connecting with an audience like that, that was like a life-changing day, and like it's cool that you'll always be a part of that in my memory, So that's what's up. I appreciate you, bro.
Much love.
I'm gonna send you some Christmas flavor. So shoot me your address. I'll send you some flavor offline.
Dope.
And that's what's up. Wow, Snax, wasn't that great?
So fresh, man. What an incredible honor to have the Juggalo legend Vinnie the ICP Kid as a part of this episode. Wow.
And you wrote those questions, and you also wrote the questions for DJ Clay for that interview, which came out 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, and those of you who haven't checked it out, I talked to DJ Clay for an hour about his production, his label, and that was great. We've been just actually having interviews with the Psychopathic family. That's tight. And the Magic Ninja family. That's tight. Juggalo Unity.
Hell yeah, man. That DJ Clay interview is great, dude. That's just a super insightful look at his upbringing too, That's so fresh.
Forks up, forks down. Juggalo Unity. No, yeah, Clay's the man. Okay, this DVD, many of you may have seen it re-released with the Milenko 20th anniversary. Oh, shoot. And you got the OG Shockumentary DVD, holler. I had it on VHS, and I also had it videotaped from MTV. Nice. Paul Andreessen directed this. He also did the American Psycho and Family Underground DVDs, and he directed Big Money Rustlers. He didn't direct Big Money Hustlers, but he's done a lot of projects for ICP. And what this video did, it was a documentary that Island paid $1 million to MTV to show over Christmas break 1997, which would have been, let's see if I can do the math right this time, 23 years ago, basically. And I remember watching it on MTV because my boy Chris, who got me into ICP, who worked for ICP, was like, yo, he sent me, I've told the story a lot, he sent me a Mutilation Mix and Ringmaster, and I'd been like listening to Riddlebox, and he was like, you need to check out this documentary. And it aired that weekend. Then the next week, everyone at school was talking about them, because what it did was show that there was a true alternative underground culture in Detroit, a regional scene that was unlike anything anyone had seen before in mainstream media. The internet didn't quite capture it, and it showed things like the chicken hunting video, which has censored lyrics, which is censored on the DVD, and it had a lot of elements that showed ICP to the mainstream. But the coolest thing about it, and Jay talks about this in the documentary, and I remember watching this, they had a disclaimer before every time they came back from a commercial. They said, every year MTV auctions off $1 million for charity. This was how they chose to spend their money, like all sarcastically, and then it went to the show. So it was like, Jay said it was fresh that MTV didn't even want to show it, which made it be like they were part of the mainstream, but the mainstream was reluctant to give them their shine. And that video really helped ICP become household names. And the other thing I wanted to say is there's some differences between the DVD and what they aired. And I was telling you this, Snax, that all the interviews with them were cut out of the MTV airing. So it was just about the response, all the mystery around them. And it reminded me of how Violent J talked about Isham's early work. He had this mysteriousness where it's like, you didn't know what Isham looked like. You didn't know who he was. You just heard about him, and that's why he was so fresh. So they tried to capture some of that mystery, and I remember watching it. It really spoke to me. It was cool. It was like, oh, we don't even see them. But then when the DVD and video came out, you saw them, and that was kind of fun. Like, their interviews are so funny, and they looked like young. They looked like babies. And so some shows that were common back in the day around this time in 97, 120 Minutes, which was like a music video show. MTV Live, which was like a live show. Twisted on Bury Me Alive talks about how they never play MTV Live. 12 Angry Viewers, which was a play on 12 Angry Men, which is that famous court drama. Hilarious. MTV with the literary references. The Real World and Road Rules. This was the type of programming they'd showed late night. Beavis and Butthead. I guess Beavis and Butthead had been over at this time. Had just ended, like right Thanksgiving before the ICP documentary. So it was an interesting change of pace because it was a monoculture where everyone was watching before YouTube, before TikTok, before Instagram stories, before everything. People would be watching this thing, and it was like this place where youth culture had it was kind of like a place where everyone would tune in to see what was going on. And it was interesting how very true to ICP, they were able to become part of the mainstream in a way that never felt like selling out. It felt like, yeah, it was just, there's something really cool about watching this on MTV when it aired. And of course, Snax, you would have been, gosh, in 97, you would have been, what, 8 years old?
I was 5 turning 6, I think.
Yeah. You weren't up late watching MTV.
Yeah. And if it aired, I think you said it aired December 30th, right? So
it's 30th, right.
Yeah, I would have turned 6 the next day.
Your birthday's New Year's?
New Year's Eve, yeah.
My man, Joey Flash, is also New Year's Eve, who the guy who produced Lars Tax. I probably told you that.
Dope. I think so, yes.
Okay, so there's several music videos throughout. Not all of these showed on the MTV airing. I think the MTV one was just Chicken Huntin' and Halls of Illusions. I think. But it's interesting how the version on the DVD is censored, right? They censored the lyrics.
Yes, they do.
The video edits.
They're all censored, and some of them are just like radio edits where it's like, you know, like a turntable, like record back scratch. But some are actually, I think, the recorded clean versions that, you know, ICP maybe had to do for Island. But yeah, all of them are totally clean versions.
That's kind of interesting. Those are all really great videos. I would say these five. 1, 2, 3. The five. They're the most.
5, yeah.
5. The 5, other than like Let's Go All the Way and some of the later videos, these are 5 of their best produced, best shot, best edited videos. Like ICP, their videos they're all good, but the production value is hit or miss. Let's be honest. So that's just being an indie label. Sometimes you put a lot in the videos, sometimes you don't. But these are all videos that were like consistently done really well. The Chicken Hunt is the second version of the video. The first version, which is we talked about, was referenced on Stranglemania. But they shot it. I remember the story saying they shot it twice reluctantly. They played it twice to shoot it for a video. And Jay was like, "We're only doing this twice. We don't want this to become like a fake music video set for a concert. We're only going to play it twice, not 3 times. Let's keep it moving." Right? You remember that story?
And I think they might have actually only played it once. I think they might have even refused to play it a second time at all. I could be wrong. But it was something to that effect for sure. They did not want to do what the label wanted to do, and the label was pretty mad.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they've had their run-ins with major labels, and I've never was signed to a major label, but they always say that you want the major label to come to you. You want to be in control if you ever sign to a major label. That's advice for any artists out there thinking about it. Because if they sign you when you're small, they can crush you. Like we're talking about WWE. They can decide that you don't mean anything. But if you have the huge regional fan base that's indie, you make the calls. And ICP is proof of that. And that's why, you know.
And in ICP's case, they also had that, Hollywood stuff. So labels are chomping at the bit.
Yeah, totally. And they like Milenko was bought. They got paid twice for that record. They got $1 million to sign with Hollywood after they had gotten the advance from Jive. No. the advance from $1 million from Hollywood to $1 million from Island, right? Which is kind of unheard of.
Yeah, and it's so funny because there's going to be a couple of instances of this in this episode, but it seems like ICP talk about this in their streaming events as we're doing these episodes, because they mentioned last night at the Slideshow Spectacular, part of their HelloFresh Holidays December streaming event, they actually said the amount that Island paid them, because in Behind the Paint they just say a little over $1 million, but Violent J says $1,200,000 is what Island paid. Sorry, Island paid for that during the bidding war, and I just thought that was cool because I don't know if the specific amount was ever really, told before in an interview.
That's what's up. That's cool. I mean, because I'm sure labels had offered $1 million and they're like $1.2 million.
That's right.
This was the early years of Napster. I remember the first song I downloaded was on an FTP site. You could go on the Usenet and find like these secret FTP servers. This was when I was in 7th grade, so that would have been 96. And the first song I downloaded, that's so old school for MP3s. I found out at summer camp, this kid named John Kilkline was telling me, yo, there's this new technology where you can download compressed music. I'm like, Real Audio, System 7 wave files, System 7 sound files, they sound horrible. He's like, no, it's good. So I found out this secret site and I downloaded Mbop by Hanson. I remember I plugged my headphones into my mom's like Mac LC2 and I listened. I was like, yo, this sounds like a CD. It sounds like I'm listening to like a Discman. And so that is my MP3 nostalgic old man MP3 story. But MP3s had 97 MP3s were not, they were still very underground. So labels knew people were going to buy this CD. And I remember when I got to high school, my friend Pete Stevenson he used this site called Hotline. And it was a Mac file sharing program, and on it, people were sharing Boogie Woogie Woo and Halls of Illusions. And I thought that was so tight because this was right before Milenko was like popular on MTV, but people were sharing it through these early sites. But the labels didn't know about it because it was pre-Napster. It was before MP3s were a mainstream thing, which is why a group like ICP could get 1.2 million to re-sign to a label after all the controversy. But we'll get into that later. What is interesting to me about this is all the enraged parents. They show it like, you could be like, oh, Marilyn Manson is shocking, NWA shocking, Dr. Dre shocking. But here they have parents like talking about like focus groups, worrying about them being satanic, worrying about them being like a horrible influence. And ICP's always kind of had this controversy, which has helped their brand, like being a gang, like theoretically. The irony of them saying like their stuff is wicked and evil, 2 years, 3 years later, 6 years later, they'd come out with the reveal on the Wraith. But it's interesting to look at this because it gives them this mystery like, oh my gosh, this is some real insanity. Like those scenes are still kind of funny now because people were so scared of the power of underground culture to amalgamate with the mainstream media and subvert kids and make them do horrible things. And it was like, that seems kind of quaint and like, I don't know, it seems very old-fashioned now to have parent groups going like, oh, look, scary albums. Our kids are in trouble. It's like, it's kind of sad that music doesn't have that power anymore, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like Violent J even talks about that in the interview in Shockumentary, how it's like, that's rock and roll. If your parents don't hate it, then it must suck. And like, he's like, I'll probably be saying to my kids, like, ever since our planet merged with Pluto, you know what I mean? Music has gone to hell. And like, it's like, it's cyclical. But you're right. Like, it definitely, I don't think any parents are as shocked as they were in like the 80s and 90s about music, And I think Shockumentary really played on that. They really tried to make ICP seem as dangerous and as extreme as possible.
Well, and it wasn't called Shockumentary on MTV. It was only branded that when it came out on VHS. But that was that was just the ICP documentary. But one of the things, like Barbara Wyatt from the PRMC, which is the Parents Resource Music Coalition, which invented the Parental Advisory sticker. There was the whole thing with Tipper Gore and rallying against Prince when Darling Nikki came out, which was this like offensive song that was one of the first reasons the Parental Advisory sticker was created. Frank Zappa was a big advocate for free speech and not censoring artists or putting the stickers on albums. Eventually that led to make albums seem more extreme. My mom was like, you can't buy anything with Parental Advisory. I was like, that's the album I want. You know what I mean? Like, it was a way to show kids that this was authentic, like kind of like a rating on a video game, right? Like a rating. So it kind of backfired, but media had this real threat because it had this power then, going back to this idea of the monoculture. I also wanted to say some interesting other elements were Like I said, in Twisted and Misery, the cameos in Hocus Pocus, Shaggy wearing the Twisted shirt, all that was new. And also, so you know how in the How Many Times video, they have 8-Boy in a cage, and that was like a preview to the Big Money Hustlers. That's crazy, right, Snax?
Yeah, that's super fresh that 8-Boy, makes an appearance before being in Hustlers.
And you know what they say in big letters behind them?
What's that?
Freak Show. It says Freak Show, and that's like a preview of what Twisted's second island record. But of course, they'd spell it Freak with 2 E's. And I was like, oh, there's all these things that like prefaced this Dark Carnival and Psychopathic's like 20-year reign. 20, 30, 40-year reign. Also, you talked about how Jay talks about alien music. Like, he goes, in 20 years, they'll be like, what's that alien music from Pluto? I saw a funny YouTube video where they show him saying that, what's this alien music from Pluto? And then they played like a dubstep song from 2017 that sounded like alien lasers. Turn on. So it's kind of funny. Yeah,
I've never seen that. That is funny.
So another funny scene is when Vinnie and his boys are in the car swearing, and the dad is just driving without reacting. That's one of the best scenes in the whole documentary.
That is,
love you,
man.
Vinnie.
I just think that's super cool that they, even back then there was an emphasis on the culture around them. It wasn't just about the band. It was already, the Juggalos were already a spectacle themselves.
Oh yeah, Shaggy's a bigger fan of them than they were of him. That's a good quote. And there's that scene where they film them in the background. You see like the burnt out, like abandoned buildings. It's like Detroit in the late 90s was going through it wasn't gentrified, and like hipsters weren't coming in there with their app startups yet. Like it was still kind of raw, and that's the world that Eminem meanwhile was freestyling and coming out of that scene. And like, so it's an interesting snapshot of the post World War II Detroit economy. Like we talked about how it was affected by when Germany and Japan got back on their feet after World War II, they were manufacturing cars again. That hurt the Detroit economy. And then what do you do? Well, you go to see ICP because you're feeling, I don't know, it's like a way to escape. Detroit has always been into escapist culture. That's why Kiss was so big in Detroit. Like if you can put on a spectacle and a show, Rush too. If you can make something over the top, people are going to come and see you. And there's the other side of that where it's also the stripped down, focus on your skills, build a community without all the theatrics, which is the Eminem side, which he would later adopt the more theatrical element. So it's an interesting sociological study of the musical history of the Midwest. So I'm looking at our notes now. I didn't realize Rich Morel is the road manager who's talking about the merch.
Well, yeah, like that's what it actually labels him as. It says Rich Morel, and then at the bottom, road manager. And I put that in the notes because I don't know of anywhere else that they speak about Rich Morel doing that work for them. So I just thought that was pretty noteworthy.
Well, okay. So maybe the Juggalos can explain this. Whether it's him playing a character or he actually was the road manager. I wouldn't be surprised if he was their road manager.
No, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't be surprised with either, to be honest with you, like, because I do think that this documentary definitely has a hint of kayfabe in it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Spider, they interview ICP tour security Spider and his boys, who I've never heard of before or since. Right. I don't know if he was just for the show.
Yeah. I feel like they've talked about him like he made it to the original Shaggy shows. Like I feel like he might have been still doing security for them, or it might have been another Spider. I just remember a Spider hanging around with them in the Shaggy show series, like the OG one from like the late 90s, early 2000s.
That's what's up. Alex Abyss is interviewed. He's so funny and he keeps it real. I met him at the the Clowns from Outer Space tour, and I remember he was there. I was in line to buy the the mixtape and a Milenko sticker, the Clowns from Outer Space CD, and I'm like, he was standing there and I go, yeah, I was 16. I'm like, are you the guy from the video? And he goes, what video, bro? And I go, the Shockumentary? He goes, that's me, bro. And I was like, oh, he talked to me. And he was like, look, he wasn't making eye contact. He was just making sure everything was moving. I was like, it's so fresh. Because I recognized him from the video. And I'm sure tons of teenage kids around the country had recognized him. But he was like, what video? That's me, bro. That was so tight.
That's fresh. I never heard that story. That's awesome, man. I don't know. I don't think many Juggalos, comparative to the other members of Psychopathic, probably not a lot of Juggalos have met Alex the same way. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because like a few years later, he'd stop. But what was cool about that is he called me bro. No one had ever called me bro before, and I was like this 16-year-old kid with my horrible ICP makeup on. Maybe we could show that picture of me from that show with my makeup on. And I was just like such a nerd, but he was cool to me. He was like, this is a young G, and he's like, he wasn't like, get out of here. He didn't ignore me. He talked to me, and that for a second, that meant a lot to me, man. That really meant a lot to me because it was like they cared enough to address my question and tell me, bro, it was him.
Yeah.
Mancow, he has a funny line about how he got converted by ICP. Now all he wants to do is kill. That's funny.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too. And I think ICP have had like an on and off relationship with Mancow. I don't know a whole lot about him besides like he's a pretty, popular radio DJ. But yeah, just a really brief appearance from him that probably would have gave ICP some credibility in the music world along with that Slash appearance. I mean, that's wild. To this day, that blows my mind. He's in this,
Slash is like, yeah, I listened for 5 seconds and I was down. I wanted to be in it.
That's crazy.
I want to tell you my Mancow story real quick.
Word.
He used to be on the air on KDON in Monterey back in the 90s, which is where I grew up, and we'd listen to him all the time. And it was like broadcast from the Bay Area. Then when Hot Topic Is Not Punk Rock kind of went viral on the radio when that came out, I was on a show in Chicago at the beginning of my tour with the Matches. And the other two people on the show that day were Emo Phillips, who's Weird Al's friend, who's a comedian who was doing stand-up comedy, and Vinnie from Pantera, rest in peace. They were both on the show. We were all interviewed on the same time, and I performed 21 Concepts, and he played a Hot Topic Is Not Punk Rock, and Emo Phillips signed a CD for me, and I shook Vinnie's hand from Pantera, and I told him, and that was like right after Dimebag had been shot on stage, like a year after. But Mancow was really cool, and he was like, I remember he said, this is MC Lars, he's a quirky artist, but we like his music and we're glad to have him on the show. And it was cool because he helped me build my audience in Chicago, but he didn't have to put me on, that was the first day of the tour I got to be on Mancow's show, and it was really cool. And I'd listened to him since I was a kid in the Bay Area. So the story with ICP is once he booked them, but they were too tired to do the show, and then they kind of led into a fight. But ICP had written a song, Mancow Made Us Rich and Famous, about how he helped them be popular on the radio, which is on which Forgotten Freshness? Do you know, Snax?
I feel like that was on one of the newer ones, like 5. I think that might have been on 5.
It's the beat that became the Oddities theme.
Yes. Yeah, I'm almost certain that's on 5.
So maybe Mancow didn't like that either. They remixed his beat for wrestling. Mike Wood you put a good note here. Good job with this research, Snax. So Mike Wood was their booking agent. So where do we hear his name on a future Joker's card? For
sure. So yeah, it's on the Jekyll Brothers. Part of some of the work that one of the Jerky Boys does on the Jekyll Brothers. One of the prank calls, he calls Mike Wood, and I think it's as his like Saul character, right? You'd probably know exactly what that is because I know you're a prank call and Jerky Boys, Mark.
That's Saul. Yeah. That's
okay.
Saul.
Word. Yeah, so it's super funny, man. And I just thought that was cool how you see them there and you see him in the documentary, you hear his name on Jekyll Brothers, and like there's a couple examples of that because like Leonard is a tour bus driver that you see interviewed briefly in Shockumentary, and Violent J talks about Leonard briefly in Behind the Paint. So it's just cool how you could see these like eras line up and cross-referenced in different parts of like ICP's output.
Well, and Behind the Paint, they talk about how Corey was kind of like a inflexible, like, don't take your shoes off, don't make a mess, blah, blah, blah. And then Leonard's complaining about how messy they are because they realize, oh, we're paying for this bus, we can be as messy as we want.
That's right.
And so that's funny that like even they kind of went over the top with that.
Yeah.
Right? And there's that girl, the woman there who's in the background saying, yeah, I'd love to go back to Nashville. The scene with her walking around the bus without clothes was not on the MTV edition. But like, that was like, yo, to see that in a video, it was like a band video. I'd never see that. It was almost like kind of like, geez, this is definitely shocking for a kid to see that.
For sure. It seemed like, yeah, definitely more wild than anything like I think a lot of people were probably used to at that time.
So let's talk about some of the other people. So Bob, the employer who they worked for, who cleaning pools, like we were wondering if that was real. Probably.
Yeah, probably. Like there were, for some reason when I watched, like every time I watched this, I always got the vibe that maybe some of them were actors. But like Bob very well could have been like an employer of like ICP. It just sometimes like seems like it does seem kind of like kayfabe, but like I said, it very well could be legit. And like another example of that was the handwriting analyst I think her name is like Pat Peterson or something. And just out of curiosity, I like Googled, Pat Peterson handwriting analyst, and there's actually like an article that interviews like a handwriting analyst named Pat Peterson, and she's like the head of some like handwriting analysis like kind of committee and stuff. So that kind of made me think like maybe all of these people are 100% legit.
Right. Graphology, which is the analysis of handwriting, it's considered a pseudoscience. There's no scientific evidence that exists that it's real, and it's like ESP. Like some people claim they have it, and maybe they do, but it's been debunked as like a fake science. And so it's interesting they have her on there, and that she was in the Chicago Tribune. She's a Midwesterner who analyzes handwriting, and it shows like what does she say, that Shaggy has a mask, and when he goes home he takes it off. Like that might be true. But I remember showing the video to my friend Chris. Shout out to my man Chris Gates, who I've had on the podcast, who's a writer who lives in LA. He was like, this is fake. They're just trying to make them seem evil. And like, I think it was interesting seeing my friend's perspective. Also, my bandmates from my first band really didn't think that ICP was funny. Like the scene where he's like talking about how they don't make money from merch, where he's like, slice a little bit off the cheese. As I've made money in the industry, I realize how real that is. Yeah. But
that's one of the parts I find the funniest in that interview, in that DVD.
We owe $250 from every shirt we sell. Stop buying our shirts. And Shaggy looks at Jay like, what? And like, maybe that's true. But my friend Tyler, who was in my first band, did not think that was funny. And he would cite that about how ICP was not good. That one scene. And it was funny. I tried to show the self-deprecating interviews to get them into it. And nope, certain friends will never be juggalos. No. And I don't think those friends don't make music anymore. So it's okay. Okay, keeping it moving. Okay, so Bob the Clown. No, the Clown. I forget his name. I tried to Google his name.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it says.
Good memory. He was not feeling them. He looked like he was about to cry. Clowns. Now they're talking about death just when they thought you were dead. That's like almost sad because he's like this sweet clown who's a children's entertainer. Yes. But he brings up a point, and we should talk about this. He goes, dreadlocks? Clowns don't have dreadlocks. Many people have said in the comments that their dreadlocks of this era were weaves. They were fake. And so let's talk about this. I think it's worth talking about because like the new metal, rap metal era was a lot about Slipknot and everything, which even though they came later, dreadlocks and the fusion of like the reggae culture with the new metal and all that was like a stylistic thing. Were they real dreadlocks, or were these fake ones they wore? What do you think, Snax?
I've heard Shaggy for sure talk about several times how he's got them like weaved in the past. I don't know if I've heard Violent J reference it, but I'm almost certain both of them were like whatever process that is. I don't know if it's like weave or extension. I'm almost certain they were that.
Extensions, because people say they're different color and they couldn't have grown them that quickly.
Yeah, it seems like there's like definitely periods of time where the dreads got super long, and it's like, how did that happen?
And then the story was Jay in a panic attack cut them off on stage one day, or something, or backstage.
Exactly. The infamous panic attack show.
And someone had ripped them off. A kid ripped one off. And
that's right. Pulled out the hair. Again, this is another example where they just recently talked about this last night. Shaggy actually talks about again how like, because they were going through pictures and he's like, oh, that was when I had like the dread weave or whatever. And he talked about how like he knew it was time to shave his head, that he's going bald because his full dreadlocks were falling out. So he eventually shaved his head. And Violent J actually says he was salty at Shaggy because Shaggy didn't tell Violent J. And he's like, wait a minute, like that's a big decision. Like you're just gonna change our image like that. And that was around the Hell's Pit era, and then Violent J shaved his head too, to kind of match.
But on Jekyll Brothers, he's bald in the artwork.
Yeah, he went through like in the late '90s and went through a period with a shaved head, and then grew it out again, and then went shaved. Okay. And he's been shaved ever since.
And then Shaggy did Jay did the short hair, like the dyed blonde, kind of spiky hair for that.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about this on Jekyll Brothers, but I always thought it was kind of like weird that they had those fake hands with the claws, like they were trying to be demons, but it was like, I don't know. I was always weird. We'll talk about that, but I was like, they just did a lot with their image after this video made it so that they had this mainstream exposure. They weren't just playing concerts and putting out their fake history and mutilation mix. They were actually able to use mass media to work on their image. And so Jekyll Brothers would be a very like, would be their bid for major label hits and stardom, and for like to reach the level of Korn. They did everything they could to try to get that way, but with it on their own terms. We'll talk about that, but let's talk about the aftermath of Shockumentary. So after Shockumentary, while they're making it, Jay talks about how this solidified their spot in the musical world, and Milenko went platinum after this came out, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It didn't take too long. And like you mentioned, Jay, I've heard him say, multiple times that even though a lot of people on the outside attribute the Hollywood record scandal to putting them, to solidifying their spot in like the music landscape, he actually attributes the airing of this documentary. And he says that to this day, it's the like smartest move he's ever seen a record label do in the music industry, Island getting this documentary aired. And you could tell that he really attributes a lot of the success to it, because I think they tried to emulate it with Twisted, because they did a very similar documentary with Born Twisted. Didn't make it on MTV, but it was still marketed to the Juggalos, and we both love that documentary. And even there's a similar one. I don't think it's quite as exaggerated, but it's definitely a bit kayfabe. Southern Bled that came with, I think, Boondocks' CD South of Hell. So you could tell that this, like, it never left his mind, you know what I mean, this Shockumentary and what he believes it did for their career.
Yeah, and the Born Twisted, which we'll do an episode on, that was a parody of VH1's Behind the Music, which is like a very funny, great documentary.
That's right.
But it goes back further than that, because ICP wasn't the first people to do like this fake documentary thing, because there's the Spinal Tap one, which is classic. But Weird Al had one that aired on Showtime called The Complete Al, spelled Compleat, which was, I think, a reference to Eat It, but also The Complete Beatles was a Beatles release.
Whoa.
So Weird Al did The Complete Al, and it came out with a book called The Authorized Al, which is one of Al's rarest, most expensive, hard to find merch items. And Bermuda, Al's drummer, told me, he said he wished when it came out he'd bought like 100 of them, because they go for like $300-$400. Famously, the Weird Al book that came out with the documentary on Pawn Stars, I think they paid like $1,000 for it. The guy was so stoked.
Wow, man. Do you have a copy?
I did. I sold it to help buy my wife's engagement ring, which I think was like a good move. But like,
noble cause for sure.
Thank you. I think it's a really funny book. That the book kind of emulates the Showtime one. I had that on VHS, and I actually have it on Laserdisc too. The Weird Al, Complete Al, which is super rare. But it's really funny because it's pretty much the same thing as this. It shows Al's origin. It shows him on tour. It shows like the 4 or 5 music videos he had out at the time, and it interviews all the people who worked with him. But a lot of it is fake. But it's anyway. So that's like a popular thing for these kind of. If you're an unorthodox artist, you need to have like an exciting, crazy origin story. And
yeah,
I wonder if ICP had seen the Weird Al one. Maybe they had. I mean, they seem to be aware of him. They've mentioned him before.
For sure. And that's something that's super cool that there's like such a direct forerunner to the Shockumentary. And I've actually wondered this, and I think we've talked about it, like how much of the creative vision of the documentary was Islands and how much was ICP. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've always kind of wondered that, because it definitely has like ICP flavor in there. But I would not be surprised if, whether it was Island or ICP, who are the main, visionary behind the documentary, I wouldn't be surprised if it was influenced by that Weird Al doc.
I mean, I think it was probably pretty much Paul Andreessen's vision, and they trusted him, and which is why they hired him for Rustlers, American Psycho, Family Underground, like all this stuff. If y'all haven't seen it, it's online, but also check out the Milenko 20th anniversary, because it's so cool. It has 3 discs. It has the album, the outtakes, and this DVD of it, and it's like a great era. Oh, shoot! And Milenko, the gold Milenko was the rarest one, so they did a shout out to that with the re-release. That's what's up.
Yes.
So fresh. Fresh. Oh yeah, Vinnie says fresh a million times, and that's why my song. I don't know if some of you have heard my song Hurricane Fresh. I used to say fresh all the time after that, and I remember this one. This is kind of embarrassing. This girl that I liked in high school, I would say fresh around. She's like, no one says fresh. They only revert to like food and fruit as fresh. That's not really something you say in the 90s. And I was so embarrassed, but also I kind of doubled down on that word, and I say fresh all the time. And I think Vinnie, he's a Juggalo legend. He inspired a lot of. I think Kevin Gill told me that he feels like Vinnie inspired Juggalo's love of obsessive collecting of merch.
Word.
And Vinnie says he's sold some of his merch, but he still has a lot of it. But like, yeah, that was like a big thing to be like, yo, there's this whole merch world that rivaled Kiss and any other band. And like Vinnie was like, I'm a fan of it. And what did he say he spent on it? $3,000?
Yeah, I think he said he's well into like multiple grand on his ICP merch, which is wild. And
but honestly, doesn't sound like a lot now. But back then in the late '90s, that would have been a lot more, right?
Well, yeah, especially because like they only were a few years into releasing merch, so I'd imagine that was a significant chunk of everything they had put out. And I think that's one cool thing about this documentary, because it kind of like is an early record of how ICP had their merch game, on lock from the beginning. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just something they learned in like 10 years in. That's what they did right from the get-go.
Maybe you can speak on this, Snax, because I'm not sure. I don't know if ICP are the biggest sports fans, but since the beginning, the Milenko hockey jersey was like huge, right? He's like, it's $200, $250 or something. We don't take credit card. Now everyone takes credit card with the card reader. Legs Diamond's like, we don't take credit card, but this is our biggest seller. You got to have it, even if you hate the band. But my point is basically that the jerseys, they're not baseball jerseys. They're not basketball jerseys. They're hockey jerseys. The way the shoulders, the way they're big, like you could wear the pads under them. They're not. Yes. They're specifically that sport. And I wonder it's because Detroit is so close to Canada. You just go across the river and you're in Canada. Like, I wondered if that was the influence of the style, because people from Canada wear jerseys when they come down to Michigan. Maybe some of the fans in the comments can explain, but you feel me? Yeah, that was my thought. They're hockey jerseys. And why hockey jerseys? Well, is it because Detroit's near Canada? I don't know.
Very possible. They definitely sell more. Like, they definitely have way more hockey jerseys than any other sports jerseys, for sure.
That's what's up. Okay, so let's talk about our upcoming episodes. And now we want to make sure our chronology is right. So here are the next few episodes, and we don't mean to spoil it, but like if y'all follow the history, this won't be surprising. So our next episode is Misery's Par La Isla, coming up next week. Then we're going to do Forgotten Freshness 1 and 2. Hopefully getting a special guest for that. Then we got Psychopathic Riotous Dumpin'. Then we got Psychopathics from Outer Space. Then Jekyll Brothers. And then we're going to do the Twisted Most Tasteless Island re-release. Then Big Money Hustlers. And then we get into Blaze and Bizarre Bizarre. But like, that's the next episodes. If this order is wrong, please leave a comment. But I just want to like make sure, because it's really important that we're telling this chronological story of one of our favorite groups. And if we're messing up the chronology, people called us out for that. We want to make sure we're all on the same track, right? I got that order right, Snax.
Yeah, that sounds right to me, man. I think we're good for the immediate future. We got work to do as far as the chronology later on, but that sounded good to me.
Did Hoodoo's Houdini Chronicles Part 1 come out on Psychopathic?
I think maybe it's possibly in an in-name-only situation. I don't know how much business ties there are to that release in Psychopathic as far as like the money. But Hoodoo, I think rep Psychopathic, and to me that's what it really seems like as far as the artists that are on Psychopathic. They're just repping. So
right,
I would say.
Do they use the Lotus Pod and stuff?
I don't think so. The way that Hoodoo was talking about it on the Shaggy and the Creep show, it didn't seem like it. It seemed like he kind of did it his own way. I could be wrong on that. Once again, if Juggalos have insight to that, let us know.
Let us know. I'm looking at the art. The back of it is the Hatchet Man with, instead of a mic, he has Hoodoo's thing with the skull, which is like what Jace holds on Milenko, and he's wearing Hoodoo's hat.
Right.
So it's just art. And same with Ouija Mac. Like Ouija he has like 12 records at least, and they're all on here. But I feel like after looking at this, after Blase Rose's Broken EP and the FOMF, and after Light, it gets kind of confusing about if you're not ICP, are you really on there? Like, for instance, ABK put out, when he put out the Sawed Off album, that's not Psychopathic, but it's, I don't know, will we review it? It's so confusing, bro. I mean, we'll be doing this, gosh, I'm looking at this, like, this is number, we're not going to do the Yum Yum Bedlam episode for a while. That's going to be episode 176. We're on episode 18. So it's going to be a minute.
The third deck will be finished by the time we get to Yum Yum Bedlam.
Oh my gosh. That's why it's cool we're doing these weekly. So yeah, leave a comment about the chronology and give us an opinion. Should we do Ouija's solo records? It's very confusing. Will we do DG Paul's Master of Evil? Probably we will. Will we do all of Hatchet House? Probably not.
Right. I know, dude. It gets really wild, man. And like even with ICP themselves, there's like so many small releases that we have a hard time. Like, does this constitute a whole episode? And
give me an example. Give me an example. Let's
for example, like gathering, like seminar releases, like Willoughby Rags, Magical Bag of Poop. Does that get its own episode?
Yeah, I think that does.
Word, cool.
Does Goldie's Give Me Them Effing Nuggets be or I'll Punch Your Effing Face? Does that get an episode? It does. That's
a great question. Wouldn't that be? Are we past that? Because I feel like that is probably a 97, isn't it?
No, but it didn't come out. That didn't come out until July of 2017.
I see what you mean. The actual release to the Juggalos. I see what you mean.
Yeah. Or should we do that when it was recorded?
Right.
So confusing. Because we're doing we're doing Most Tasteless re-release later, but that was recorded earlier.
That's right.
It's crazy. And then it's like the twisted stuff that Magic Ninja re-released. We're talking about the psychopathic version. So if Magic Ninja added flavor, we're not trying to talk about it. No disrespect. It's just like there's enough with these 200 episodes, bro.
Yeah, that's right. But you know what? It's a good problem to have because this just means that there's so much freshness and flavor to cover that our heads are spinning.
I mean, and at Big Money Hustlers, we do an episode on like all the physical media releases that are important, and we also we're doing 2 Forgotten Freshnesses, bro. This episode is nothing if not thorough. You know that the needle drop, Anthony. I don't know his last name, but the guy who does the needle drop.
Yes, sir.
He tweeted he wanted to do episodes on all of ICP's records, and I was like, Anthony, I've already started that, and he retweeted me, which was kind of cool.
That's fresh. When did he tweet that?
A few years ago, when I before we reboot Hatchet Chat, and then I tweeted, Joe, check it out, and he tweeted that. He tweeted the first few episodes. So, why did I mention him? It's because there is a long tradition of YouTube discography discussions for the niche audience. We love y'all. Thanks for watching. In other words, we're not going away. Check us out. Check me out. I'm MC Snax. I'm from Canada. I do kind of like nerdcore, gospel, juggalo rap. And what's your name? What's your rap thing?
I'm MC Lars, nerdcore, legend and pioneer. And check me out on Bandcamp, mclars.bandcamp.com.
Yeah, we flipped it. Because I'm Lars and he's Snax. All right. Oh, and check out my interview with George and check out my interview with what Juggalo interviews do I have up? I got George from MME. I've got DJ Clay. I've got one with Child's Play Ninja dropping next week and some other Juggalos that are down. So the MC Lars podcast. And if you haven't heard my interviews with Snax, they're really good because we talk about his discography.
Thanks, buddy. It's been an honor. And yeah, Vinnie the ICP Kid on this episode again. Wow. Do you know what I mean? I hope you Juggalos enjoyed this flavor and all the flavor that's to come.
Holler. And what's the next ICP event? They're doing all the December shows, right?
Yes, sir. So at the time that this drops, I actually don't know, but we can put it on the screen. They've had 2 so far at the time of recording. They had the Juggalo Cook-Off and the Sideshow Spectacular. And, I was just hoping for a one leading up to Big Ballers because the House Party Peep Show for Hallow Wicked was so dope. And this one isn't disappointing so far. So if you're not subscribed, Juggalos, check it out. ICP on Patreon.
I'm doing a show on Boxing Day, shout out to Canada, with my Nerdcore homies, with Shubzilla and Bill Beats. It's the Boxing Day post-Christmas special, and I'm doing some Christmas songs. So we'll post tickets for that, but we have like merch and all that sort of flavor. We have masks, actually, COVID masks that we're selling for Christmas. So right. Merry Christmas! Yeah, so check that flavor out. And if you like Star Wars, speaking of Patreon, I'm doing raps about all the Star Wars movies. My next one is about... what is my next one? You'll have to tune in to check it out. I think it's about one of the first Star Wars video games, but I forget the chronology. It's a lot to keep track of. We love y'all. Thanks for watching.
Much love, y'all. Much clown love. Peace.
We both did that at the same time.
That's right.
Can I get a whoops and 2 claps in this? Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Peace, y'all. Peace, y'all. Love you. Bye.